maximizing your SOX program.
Yes, thank you, James. So this is where I was mentioning earlier about the SOX optimization equation. And you can see an equation at the top here. So optimization equals effectiveness and efficiency. So when we're talking effectiveness here, what we're really looking for is that clean opinion on our internal controls. No material weaknesses, nothing that needs to be reported outside of the company. And then when we look at efficiency, we measure that in dollars and of course in pain. Even if you've got money to throw at your compliance, everybody knows that late nights and more work than you were expected is equal to pain, and we want to avoid both of those things actually, or at least minimize them. So on the left side of this wheel here, I'm going to be focused on the effectiveness points, and then on the right side, more the efficiency, and obviously you'll see how these all interrelate. I often get questions from management and audit committee members. They'll give me a scenario. They'll say, hey, I've got a company headquartered in San Francisco. It's a software company. They've got about 1,500 employees. They're on NetSuite. They're located in 4 different countries. How many internal controls, SOX key controls, do you think we would need for that? And the answer is, it sounds a little flippant, but it is to the point. You need all the controls you need. And how do you know how many you need? Well, you have to go through a process known as a risk assessment so that you can identify all your risk and then map the various controls that help you to minimize and control those risks. So I really can't tell you until I do that. I could give you some averages, but they would be pretty meaningless because it really depends on your particular company's situation. And then on the efficiency side, just continuing with the number of control theme, you've got the same thing. For efficiency, how many controls do you need? All you need, but I'll add no more. The reason for that is every control has a cost to it. You know, it has to be designed, has to be documented, it has to be eventually tested, evaluated, and reported on. And not only that, that's just the evaluation side of SOX, but somebody actually has to perform it. So you can see there's clearly a lot of cost with that. So getting that, understanding your risk and making sure you have the correct number of controls is key to both effectiveness and efficiency. And what about the management and the audit committee? Well, what we need most of all from this side is really the appropriate tone at the top. If management understands key risk and shows how important that internal controls are, then the rest of the company will generally follow along. And how do they show that they believe in this and that they understand all this? They allocate the appropriate resources for both the controls themselves and the evaluation process that must ensue. And that's true for management and the audit committee. And then there's this idea of maximize external auditor reliance. Now we're getting to the efficiency, right? So as I stated earlier, every control you have has a cost, right? So it's got to be tested and evaluated. And if you're under 404B, like Sarah and James were talking about earlier, that means your external auditors have to sign off on the internal controls. They have to give an opinion. And obviously, you want a good opinion. But in order for them to do that, they either have to rely on the testing work that management has done and all the other documentation that management's done, or they've got to go in and test it themselves. Now, you'll never get 100% reliance, but the idea is to understand where the auditors are on their reliance percentages, what they're kind of targeting, and make sure that you are getting the maximum out of that. This not only reduces cost for each individual controls on the evaluation side, but it also reduces the pain for the process owners because they're not having the same thing tested twice, once by management and once by the auditors. And speaking of process owners, what do we really need from process owners to be effective? Well, and efficient for that matter, is that they have to have training right? You don't just wake up out and come out of accounting school and understand, how to do SOX and what the importance of that is. Everybody needs to be on the same page. They also need to understand that SOX is an open book test, right? Here's your controls. And here's the way you need to approach them, document them. And if you do all that and you integrate that into your daily activities, process owners are going to have a much easier time and you're going to get a much better result. And then we hear a lot about increased automation. Now, we all know AI is going to take away all of our detailed work. I don't see it yet. So, there's probably some intermediate steps that we need to take. And what I'm getting to there is you can automate your evaluation process to some extent, and you should always try and do that. But you also need to increase the automation in your accounting activities and reporting process. And I'll talk about that a little bit more in depth in a later slide here. And then finally, and I'm going to go ahead and bring both sides to bear here. The reason is because they're exactly the same. For effectiveness, you need to have a SOX project management office. Depending on the size and scope of your company, that might be one person. It might also be one person who's using a combination of internal and external resources. But the key takeaway here is that you have to have someone in your company who is qualified, has the resources and focus to keep your SOX project on point year after year and all throughout the year. This thing can really run off the rails quickly and you will not get the results that you want. If you keep all of these things in mind on both sides of this, effectiveness and efficiency, you have a really good chance of getting to that, what we call SOX optimized. I said I was going to drill down a little bit more on the automation opportunity here. And what I see in companies is there is usually a lot of emphasis on, certainly companies we work with, that you need to do the evaluation part of SOX more efficiently so that it costs less. And we totally get that. And we work very hard to be as efficient as possible in that process. But I believe, and I have seen that the more that you can actually automate and improve the underlying accounting processes, especially around the close, those have the biggest bang for the buck on the improving your efficiency around SOX and your effectiveness as well. So I've got a little statement here. 78% approximately of all the information needed for SOX is produced in the accounting close. Now, I didn't pull that from Accounting Today or any other periodical. As you can see in the bottom site there, it's actually from my own experience, right? Of working with over 40 companies and at least 100 SOX cycles during that time. This is reality. This is where the data that we need, that you need, or anybody else needs to go through a SOX evaluation process. It lives in the close. James?
Yeah, thanks, Kevin. And here's a graphic of those close activities, that 78% that Kevin just mentioned. There's typically a list of significant or critical activities that happen at month end, and that's what's going to drive your close cycle. Closing activities, including journal entries, analyses, and reconciliations are performed in preparation for financial reporting. If your team is working through more manual activities, leveraging less on your ERP system, they'll be working harder than they need to. And this includes maintaining email approvals, electronic files, everything you see in that box in the upper right-hand corner. In addition, evidence of approval, the final piece, the crown to ensure you and your team gets credit for performing the control, may also need to be tracked and retained. What's more, we're going to double down. When it comes time to assess the effectiveness of your controls, your auditor, that's me up there, represented by the B, will also need to work harder, because we're going to have to spend time navigating files in your network, probably getting some read-only access, searching through emails if need be, providing additional manual write-ups in our test sheets, and then working through any potential issues that often arise with missing evidence or evidence that doesn't quite cut it in terms of meeting SOX requirements. This adds to the level of effort to completing SOX testing. And the point here is that manual processes and documentation and testing are more expensive and typically have higher rates of deficiencies. And where we see more automation, we also see fewer deficiencies and smoother, more efficient testing with less work and cost to companies. Speaking of automation, Kevin's going to talk us through a little bit more about that.
So what does it look like, right? When you endeavor to automate your close? Well, you're going to choose an automation platform, right? That's the way it's typically done now. And here are some of the features and functions and attributes that you want to see in that platform in order to reach the goal we're talking about. For one thing, it needs to be ERP agnostic. In other words, it needs to be able to integrate your trial balance no matter what your GL is. It needs to provide a dynamic and transparent workflow for all your close activities. You're no longer keeping your close on an Excel spreadsheet like I used to do, and then calling all these meetings during the close and trading emails to find out what the status is. You can look into your platform that you've chosen and see that at any time. It also should promote standardized reconciliations. We all love spreadsheets. I love spreadsheets, but let's don't kid ourselves. They do contain errors sometimes, and they can get us in trouble. So the more that we standardize things, the better off we're going to be. Provide a centralized workspace, a single source of truth. That gets back to what James was showing on the graphic, right? How many different places does somebody need to go to find the data that we need to evaluate the validity of a particular process that occurred? Somebody prepared something, somebody reviewed something, and here's all the data for it. If to the extent that we can go to a central place and have all of that systematically, asserted and certified, the easier it's going to be. Which brings me to the final point. It needs to allow read-only access for your SOX testers, your external auditors, and anybody else that obviously that you would want to authorize who would have an interest here. But those are the primaries, your SOX testers and your external auditors, and have it in such a way where they can easily and directly, pull that completed data. Now, it's not like they can just do that anytime. You want a system that you can limit, or better yet, you can determine when that data is available for that read-only access. Now, not surprisingly, we have a favorite here. We like Blackline. We're a full service provider of the Blackline platform, and we've seen a lot of the things that we've been talking about around efficiency by people adopting this particular software. I'm not going to go into any more great detail here, but if that interests you and you want to see how this can really make a difference, just reach out to us and we'll walk you through the evaluation process to see if it's right for you. So just to summarize our offerings from Sensiba around SOX compliance. Some people, they need a lot of help in this area. We offer a full outsourced SOX PMO, project management office, end to end, year after year, and we have clients we work with in this way. But some people, they have some resources inside their company, and they just need to be augmented at key points throughout the process each year. And we call that our co-sourcing model. Maybe it's just help with walkthroughs, SOX testing, some remediation, you name it. We can customize a program in a flexible way and work with you there. And then, as I mentioned, close optimization software. We're a full service provider of Blackline, and we can help you to evaluate and implement that product if it's right for you. And then finally here in the last box, special internal audit and SOX projects. So maybe you've got a new service line or service offering or product line. You've gone through an acquisition, or you've got some new accounting requirements that are creating a challenge for you. We can jump in and take over any one of